There is a kind of fear that shows up when nothing is wrong. It does not wait for a threat. It arrives in a safe room on an ordinary evening, in the quiet after a long day, and it sets the heart going over something that has not happened and may never happen. You have almost certainly felt it. Most people have. It can hold on for an hour or for half a night, and the strangest part is that some quiet part of you knows the entire time that there is nothing actually there. Now think about the opposite. Take that same body and drop it into a real emergency. A car sliding on ice, a fall from a height, a sudden figure on a dark street, and something surprising can happen. The fear goes quiet. The mind turns cold and clear and fast. The body acts before any feeling has caught up, and the terror, if it comes at all, arrives much later. It waits until the danger has already passed and there is nothing left to do about it. These are the two faces of a single system, and they do not behave the way you would expect. One of them is fear, the other is anxiety. They borrow the same body, the same racing pulse, the same shallow breath, the same muscles drawn tight and waiting. Yet one of them answers a danger that is real and present and in front of you. The other answers a danger that has no body at all. It exists only as a possibility, somewhere ahead of you in time. Around 300 million people on this planet are living inside that second kind at this very moment. It is the most common unrest of the human mind, more common than any other trouble we know how to name, and almost none of them are in the danger their bodies are so certain of. There is no snake in the room, there is no cliff and no intruder. There is only a thought about the future, and a body that has decided to believe it. That is the strange thing about the organ behind your eyes. It can stay calm in front of a genuine threat and come apart over one that will never arrive. It can save your life without asking your permission. It can also cost you a whole night of rest over a thing you already know is not real. The same machinery does both. The same ancient purpose drives both. And it is running inside you either way, whether you notice it or not. So what is the real difference, deep in the living tissue, between a fear that rescues you and a worry that slowly wears you down? Why would a mind fall silent in the face of true danger and then scream for hours at an imagined one? And how does an alarm that was built to fire once and go quiet manage to get stuck in the on position for days, for weeks, for months on end? If the hidden workings of your own mind are the kind of thing you like to slow down and sit with, a like would be highly appreciated, and it helps these quiet explorations reach other people who would enjoy them too. If something here raises a question, or puts a name to a feeling you've carried for a while, the comments are open for exactly that. Now, let's begin. Start with something your body does without asking you first. A door slams somewhere in the house, a shape drops past the corner of your eye, a hand lands on your shoulder when you are sure you are alone. In that first instant you do not think anything at all. You flinch, your shoulders climb, your breath stops halfway in. Your eyes are already snapping toward the thing before any part of you has chosen to look. The reaction is finished before the explanation has even begun. Then, a beat later, the world catches up. It was only the wind. It was only a coat slung over the back of a chair. It was only a friend who came in quietly and meant nothing by it. Your heart is still hammering while the calm and reasoning part of you arrives late at the scene. That slower part feels a little foolish. It explains gently that there was never anything here to fear. But notice the order of what just happened. Your body reached its verdict first. You were told about it second. This is the first strange fact about fear, and it hides in plain sight because it happens so often. Fear is not a decision you make. It is not a thought you have and then act upon. It is a program that runs on its own, underneath you, and hands you the result once the work is already done. By the time the feeling reaches the part of you that says the word I, The alarm has long since sounded. The body has already moved. The chemicals are already loose in the blood. You are not the one who trips the alarm. You are the one who gets woken by it. Consider how little time this takes. A sudden movement can have you turning and tensing in less time than it takes to blink. Your hand can leave a hot surface before the heat is even registered as pain. The reacting runs so far ahead of the understanding that the two feel like separate events. In the brain, that is exactly what they are. They're handled by different equipment, on different schedules. One system is fast and wordless. The other is slow and full of language. The fast one goes first, every single time. Why would a brain be built this way? Why hand such a heavy judgment to a system that acts before the thinking part of you can even weigh in? The answer is written into a long history of near misses. Think for a moment about what hesitation actually costs. An animal on an open plain sees a long dark shape lying in the grass. If it pauses to study that shape, to reason its way carefully towards snake or fallen branch, it may reason itself directly into being killed. The animal that jumped first and checked afterward is the one that lived long enough to have young. The careful one, more often than we would like to believe, did not. So the brain struck a bargain, and it is a bargain it is still keeping inside you tonight. It chose speed over accuracy on purpose. It decided that a false alarm costs almost nothing. A wasted flinch, a moment of feeling silly in an empty room. A missed alarm, on the other hand, cost everything you are and everything you might have been. A system tuned to those stakes will be wrong again and again. It will jump at branches and shadows and slam doors for the whole length of your life. That constant wrongness is not a defect in the machine. It is the machine doing precisely the job it was shaped to do. There is another clue in the way this fast system works, and it points toward what you're looking for. The quick route does not see in fine detail. It does not wait for the sharp and full and coloured version of the world, the version that lets you recognise a face or read a word. It works from something far rougher, a blur of motion, a coil of shape, a patch of dark where no dark should be. It takes the crudest sketch the senses can throw together and treats that sketch as enough to act on. Detail is slow. This system has no patience for slow, and this is old machinery. It is far older than language, older than the parts of you that plan and remember and lie awake worrying. Creatures with almost nothing we would honour with the word mind still startle, still freeze, still flee. A fish flinches, a lizard bolts. The wordless alarm was already running on this planet long before anything here could name what it was running from. What you feel when a door slams is not a modern feeling at all. It is one of the oldest inheritances you carry, passed down through an unbroken line of animals that survived because they moved first and understood later. You can feel how automatic all of this is by trying to switch it off. Stand at the edge of a high balcony behind a solid rail. You're in no danger at all, and you know it perfectly well. And still, if you lean out over the edge, something in you tightens and pulls you back. You cannot reason your way past it. The thinking part of you can hold every fact about the strong railing and the safe footing, and the old alarm ignores all of it, because the old alarm does not listen to reason. It was never built to. There is a price folded into that bargain though, and you have felt this price yourself. A system that fires first and asks questions later does not only fire at real snakes, it fires at anything shaped closely enough like a snake to be worth the jump. It cannot afford to wait for proof, so it simply does not wait for proof. It runs on rough resemblance, on the faintest hint of a familiar pattern. It would far rather embarrass you 100 times over than be caught flat once. Hold on to that idea as you drift, because it will matter enormously later. It will matter most when the thing setting off the alarm is not in the room at all. For now, stay with the plain shape of it. Long before you know what frightened you, Your body already knows. Something inside your skull looked out at the world and made a life or death call in an instant. It moved your muscles for you. It spent your heartbeats for you. And it did all of this in a slice of time too short to hold a single conscious thought. Which leaves the question this whole night turns upon. What is that something? Where does it sit inside the head? And how can a small knot of living tissue judge danger so fast and stay so willing to be wrong? So go looking for it. Deep inside the brain, roughly level with your ears, there is a matched pair of small structures. One sits on the left side, one sits on the right. Each is about the size and shape of an almond, and that resemblance is where the name comes from. The old anatomist took the Greek word for almond and called these two clusters the amygdala. They are small enough to hold between two fingers, and they are the reason you jumped at the slammed door. The amygdala is the brain's threat detector. It is the thing that made the call in the dark, the part that decided danger, and moved your body before the rest of you had caught up. It sits low and central, wired into the senses coming in and the body going out. That places it perfectly between what you notice and what you do about it. When it decides something matters, and especially when it decides something threatens you, it does not send a memo and wait for a reply. It acts. The man who mapped this more clearly than anyone was a neuroscientist named Joseph Ledoux. He spent years in the quiet of a laboratory, listening in on the brains of rats as they learned something very simple. A harmless sound would play, and a moment later would come a mild shock. It did not take the animals long to learn the link. Soon the sound by itself was enough to make them freeze, the whole body going still in the ancient posture of a creature that has sensed a predator. Ledoux followed that fear inward. He went from the ear, through the brain, to the exact spot where the sound and the danger became one thing. The spot was the amygdala. What he found there rewrote how we understand fear. The signal from the senses does not take one road to the amygdala. It takes two. One road is the long and careful one. It climbs up to the sensory cortex, the wrinkled outer sheet where the world is built in full detail, where a shape resolves into clearly a snake or clearly a stick. Only after that careful work is finished does the signal travel down to the amygdala carrying the answer. This is the road of accuracy, and accuracy takes time. The other road is a shortcut, and it is a large part of why you are alive to hear this. Instead of climbing all the way up to the cortex, a copy of the signal peels off early. It branches at the thalamus, the brain's central relay station for the senses. From there it drops straight down to the amygdala, skipping the detailed cortex completely. This road carries no fine detail. It carries only the rough outline, the crudest possible sketch of what just happened. But it is fast. It arrives long before the careful road is even finished. Ledoux gave the two paths a pair of names that stuck. The low road, quick and coarse, the high road, slow and sharp. You have lived this split yourself. You're walking in the garden at dusk and you leap back from a coiled shape on the path before a slower voice inside catches up and murmurs that it is only the hose. The leap came from the low road, which saw a rough coil and screamed snake. The correction came from the high road, arriving a full second later with a calm and detailed truth. For that whole second, your body genuinely believed the hose was a snake. And it was right too. A second is a very long time when something is deciding whether you live. Put a number on how fast the low road really is, because the number is hard to believe. When researchers have recorded directly from the human amygdala, they have caught it responding to a frightened face in about 74 thousandths of a second. That is a fraction of the time it takes to blink. It is faster than you can possibly know you have seen anything at all. And here is the detail that gives the whole game away. That lightning response only happens for the blurred, low-detail version of the face. Feed the amygdala the sharp and finely resolved version, and the fast response simply vanishes. It is not built for detail. It is built for speed, and it will take the roughest smear of a threat and act on it. There is a familiar object that behaves in exactly this way, and it is probably a few feet above your head as you lie there. Think about the smoke detector in the hallway. It is a crude and unintelligent little device. It cannot tell the difference between a house burning down and a dinner left too long under the grill. It hears the faintest hint of smoke and it shrieks. Every time. The same full panic whether the threat is real or nothing at all. It has woken the whole house at 3 a.m. over a slice of burnt toast. It is wrong far more often than it is ever right. And yet you would never pull the battery out. You keep that screaming, oversensitive, frequently wrong little box on the ceiling for one simple reason. The single night it is right, it saves everyone under the roof. The amygdala is that detector sunk into the deepest part of you. A smoke alarm waits to be installed and can be switched off at the wall. This one came fitted before you were born, and there is no switch on the ceiling you can reach. It runs whether you want it to or not. It is tuned, on purpose, to cry wolf. And most of the alarms it raises now are false, because the world it was built for is gone. It was shaped for a place of predators and cliffs and rival tribes, where a fast wrong guess cost almost nothing, and a slow right one cost your life. You do not live in that place anymore. You live in a world of deadlines and messages and crowded rooms, where almost nothing you meet can actually kill you. But the detector never got the news. It still scans for snakes, and it still finds them in a sharp email, in a silence that lasts a little too long, in a face across the room that will not meet your eye. That tuning explains so much of what is coming. A detector set to catch every possible fire will fill your life with false alarms, and it is meant to. Being wrong in the safe direction is the whole point of the design. But notice what the detector actually does and does not do. It detects. It decides. It sounds the alarm. Sounding an alarm, though, is not the same as fighting the fire. Between that split-second judgment in the almond and the pounding heart in your chest, something still has to happen. Something has to take the verdict and turn it into a whole body braced to run. So what does the amygdala reach for in the instant after it decides that you are in danger? The instant the amygdala decides, it reaches downward. At its core sits a small output hub called the central nucleus, and this is the part that broadcasts the alarm to the rest of you. It does not deliberate. It fires a burst of commands down into the oldest and most automatic machinery you own, the parts of the brain that run the body without ever consulting you. 2 targets matter most. One is the hypothalamus, the brain's master control for the body's automatic settings. The other is the brainstem, the ancient stalk at the top of the spine that keeps the involuntary body running. You already know what comes next from the inside because you have felt every step of it. Within a single second, your heart begins to pound harder and faster. Your breath turns quick and shallow. The pupils of your eyes widen to let in more of the world. Blood drains out of your skin and your stomach and pours instead into the big muscles of the arms and legs. Digestion stops where it stands. Your mouth goes dry. A faint tremor enters your hands. All of it arrives together in a single rush, and none of it waited for your permission. Then comes a second wave to keep the fire burning. On a command from above, 2 small glands sitting on top of the kidneys release a surge of adrenaline into the bloodstream. Adrenaline is the messenger that keeps the whole body lit after the first electric jolt has passed. It is why the shakiness and the racing heart outlast the moment that caused them, why you can still be trembling minutes after the near miss on the road, long after the car has straightened and the danger has gone. A slower hormone follows behind it to keep you braced for longer, but the fast story is written by adrenaline. A century ago, a physiologist at Harvard named Walter Cannon watched these changes unfold and understood what they were for. He saw that the body was not falling apart under threat. It was reorganizing itself in an instant, with great precision, for one purpose: violent effort right now, blood to the muscles for running or fighting, wide eyes for seeing, fuel poured into the blood. Everything that could wait, like digesting a meal, switched off until the crisis had passed. Cannon gave this whole reorganization the name we still use for it. He called it fight or flight. That famous name has stuck so well that it hides a third option, one older than either fighting or fleeing. Sometimes the body does not surge into motion at all. It freezes, everything stops, the breath holds, the muscles lock, the eyes fix hard on the threat. This is not the body failing to act. It is the oldest defense there is, older even than running, because a creature that holds perfectly still is a creature many predators cannot pick out. Movement is what catches the eye. Stillness is a kind of hiding. When you feel yourself go rigid and unable to move in a frightening moment, that is not weakness in you. That is an ancient program choosing on your behalf to vanish. Now hold still and see what all of this actually means, because it overturns something you have believed your whole life. The amygdala does not feel afraid. It has no feelings to give. It is a switch, not a sufferer. What it does is throw the entire body into a particular state, and the pounding heart and the dry mouth and the tremor in the hands are that state being obeyed. The thing you call fear, the awful physical wave of it, is not the almond having an emotion. It is your body carrying out an order. The almond commands, the body performs. Keep that separation in mind, because much later it will crack this whole subject wide open. This is why fear never feels like something you're doing. It feels like something being done to you. You do not experience yourself deciding to sweat, or choosing to shake, or electing to freeze. You experience a wave arriving from somewhere you cannot see, and washing through the body while you hold on and wait for it to pass. In a real sense, that is the truth of it. The order was given below the level where you live. You're simply feeling the body follow it. There is one more feature of this system, and it is the most important one for where we're going. The entire Cascade is built to be short. It is a sprint, not a way of life. The threat appears, the body ignites, you run or you fight or you freeze, and then the danger passes. The moment it passes, a second system moves in to stand the body down. It slows the heart. It lets the breath drop and deepen. It sends the blood back to the skin and the gut, and it lets the tremor fade. The alarm falls silent, the body returns to rest, fire, then stop. The stopping is not an afterthought. It is half of what makes this whole system safe to carry inside you. Think about what a life would be like without that second half. A body that ignited and never came down would burn itself to nothing in a matter of days. The heart cannot pound like that forever. The muscles cannot stay flooded and clenched for weeks on end. This is why the design insists on an ending, why every true alarm is followed by an all clear that lets everything settle back into place. A healthy fear is a spike. It rises, it does its work, and it falls away. The falling is precisely what keeps the rising from destroying you. So look at what we now have in front of us. A tiny almond deep in the brain, wired to the senses and tuned to be wrong in the safe direction. It throws the whole body into a brief and violent readiness the instant it catches the hint of a threat. Everything about fear seems to begin and end with this one small structure. It is the trigger. It is the source. It is the first domino in the whole falling line, which invites a question that sounds almost cruel and almost impossible to answer. What would a person be like if they had no amygdala at all? Would they simply move through the world unable to feel afraid? As it happens, we do not have to imagine such a person. She is real, and researchers have known her for decades. Researchers call her SM. Those two initials are a wall they built to protect her, because her real name is not the point. What matters is what is missing inside her head. She's a woman from the American Midwest, born in the middle of the 1960s, and by every ordinary measure she is entirely herself. She is warm, she is talkative, she is a mother, her memory works, her language works, her senses bring her the world exactly as they bring it to you. There is only one thing wrong with her brain, and it is very specific. Beginning in her late childhood, a rare genetic condition called Urbach-Wiethe disease went quietly to work on her. Over years, it hardened the tissue of her amygdala on both sides of her brain. It laid down deposits until the two almonds turned to something like stone, calcified and closed and effectively gone. The disease left almost everything else untouched. It reached in with terrible precision and removed only the threat detectors, one on the left and one on the right, and then it stopped. What remained was a woman with an ordinary mind and no working alarm. At the University of Iowa, a group of scientists came to know her over the course of decades. The team included Ralph Adolphs and Daniel Tranell and Antonio Damasio. Later, a young researcher named Justin Feinstein joined them. They tested her again and again, gently and thoroughly, and they kept arriving at the same impossible finding. This woman did not seem able to feel afraid. She was not simply less afraid than most people, or braver than most people. It was something closer to fear not being available to her at all. The first hints had come from something far smaller than a haunted house. When they showed her photographs of human faces and asked her to name the feelings, she read almost all of them with ease: happiness, sadness, surprise, anger. But when a face showed fear, she stumbled. The expression that every other person on Earth recognizes in an instant meant almost nothing to her. Asked once to draw a frightened face, she could not do it, and quietly admitted she did not know what one looked like. The emotion was so absent from her that she could not even find it in someone else. So they set out to frighten her, on purpose, with everything they had. They took her to an exotic pet store filled with live snakes and spiders. She did not shrink back. She was drawn in. She kept reaching for the largest and most dangerous animals and asking to hold them. She ran her fingers over the scales, and the staff had to stop her from touching the ones that could truly hurt her. She said afterward that she was overcome not by fear but by curiosity, by a pull to get closer to the very things that empty a normal room in seconds. They took her to one of the most frightening haunted attractions in the country, a sprawling old building staffed by monsters trained to make grown adults scream. She walked through it at the front of the group, leading the way, entirely calm. When a costumed figure lunged out of the dark to terrify her, she did not flinch or run. She laughed, and she reached toward it, curious about the mask. By the end of the night, it was the actors who were unsettled. One of them had leapt out at her and gotten, in return, a delighted woman trying to get a better look. They showed her films built to disturb, the kind that leave most viewers tense for hours, and she watched with interest and reported no fear. And this was not a laboratory curiosity sealed off from real life. Her life had held genuine horror. She had been threatened at knife point. She had been held at gunpoint. She had lived through violence that would leave most people changed for years. She could describe these events plainly, and what was missing from the telling was the terror. In the moments themselves when her life hung in the balance, the alarm that should have seized her body never sounded. There was a cost to living without that alarm, and it was not a small one. On a standard questionnaire that asked people to rate their fear across dozens of everyday situations, she scored at the very bottom, close to nothing. And the world is not gentle with a person who cannot feel afraid. Fear is what teaches the rest of us to step wide of the dangerous corner and to read the warning in a stranger's face. It is what stops us from returning to the place that once hurt us. She had almost none of that. She walked toward danger again and again because the signal that should have pulled her back was simply not there. Her fearlessness was never a kind of strength. It was a missing sense. Sit with what this confirms, because it seems to close the case completely. Everything we have said so far predicted exactly this. Take away the amygdala, and you take away fear of the world's dangers, the snake and the knife, the monster in the dark and the film built to frighten. All of them reached a brain with no threat detector, and all of them landed in silence. The almond really does seem to be the trigger. Remove it, and the trigger is gone, and nothing out in the world can make this woman afraid. And here is the part that makes her not a broken person, but a strange kind of window. She was not numb. She still felt joy. She still felt sadness. She laughed easily and loved her children and moved through her days with feeling. It was only fear, only that single thread that had been pulled cleanly out of the weave, which seemed to prove the tidiest possible story. One small structure, one emotion. Damage the structure, lose the emotion, and leave everything else standing. Fear had an address in the brain, and she was the living proof of it. For years, that is exactly where the science came to rest. The amygdala was the seat of fear. Full stop. The case looked closed, the story finished, the map complete. Then one afternoon, in a small room at the university, a few researchers sat SM down and fitted her with a mask. They were not going to show her a snake, or a monster, or a film. They were going to ask her to take a single deep breath of a specially prepared air, and what came in the next few seconds would take that finished story and tear it clean in half. The air in the mask was not poison. It was ordinary air with one thing changed. Normal air carries only the faintest whisper of carbon dioxide. This mixture was more than a third carbon dioxide, an enormous dose delivered in a single breath. Carbon dioxide is the gas your body makes as waste and breathes out with every exhale. When its level in the blood climbs too high, the body reads that rise as one specific message, the oldest emergency there is. It means you are suffocating. It means, right now, you cannot breathe. SM took the breath, and the woman who had strolled through snakes and knives and haunted houses without a flicker came apart. She gasped. Her hands flew up to the mask. Her heart raced, her body flooded with panic, and she cried out for it to stop. For the first time that anyone had ever recorded, SM was afraid. Truly, physically afraid. Afterward, she struggled to describe it because she had no memory to hold it against. She said it was something she had never felt in her adult life. The woman with no amygdala had just been terrified. The scientists did not stop with her. They found 2 more people who, like SM, had lost the amygdala on both sides of the brain to the same rare disease. They gave them the same single breath, and the same thing happened. Both of them panicked, gasping and frightened, their bodies seized by an alarm they were supposedly incapable of feeling. 3 people with no threat detector, and all 3 had just been thrown into raw fear by a lungful of air. Now here is the detail that turns this from strange into important. When ordinary people with fully intact amygdala breathed the same mixture, only some of them panicked. Fewer than half. The people missing the very organ we had called the seat of fear did not panic less than everyone else. They panicked more. Every single one of them broke, while most of the people with working alarms rode it out. The absence that made SM fearless in front of a snake had somehow left her more helpless in front of a breath. So what actually happened in that room? The answer is that fear does not live in one place, and it never did. There is a second alarm, and it is not the almond. It sits lower and deeper down in the brainstem, in the ancient core that runs breathing and heartbeat without a thought. This deeper alarm does not watch the outside world. It has no interest in snakes or masks in the dark. It watches the body itself. It monitors the blood, the gases, the internal signs of whether the machinery of staying alive is holding together. And when the carbon dioxide surged, this inner watchman tripped directly. It sounded fear straight from the body, with no need to ask the almond at all. You have met this inner alarm yourself, though you may never have known its name. Hold your breath for as long as you possibly can and feel what finally forces you to stop. That desperate building urgency is not your body running out of oxygen. It is the rising carbon dioxide, and it is this deep alarm reading that rise and overriding everything you want. You cannot think your way past it. You cannot simply decide to keep holding. The inner watchman takes the controls out of your hands and makes you breathe. That is the very same system that seized SM in the chair. This inner alarm is also why a panic attack feels the way it does. In a panic attack, this deep suffocation alarm can fire when the air is perfectly fine and the body is in no real danger at all. It floods a person with the total conviction that they cannot breathe and that they may be about to die. And it does this in a quiet room where nothing whatsoever is happening. The terror is real, because the alarm is real. It is simply aimed at a threat that is not there. So the neat story comes apart here. The brain does not have a single fear center. It has fear systems, and they face in different directions. One of them looks outward, watching the world come in through the eyes and ears, deciding whether anything out there means you harm. That outward system is the amygdala, and it was the one Sem had lost. The other looks inward, watching your own body for signs that it is failing. That inward system lives in the brainstem, and it was the one she still had. She had lost the guard at the front gate and kept the one standing watch over her own heart. And there is a final turn hidden in the numbers, the strangest part of all. Remember that the people with intact amygdalae mostly did not panic, while every patient without one did. That points to something almost backwards. The amygdala may not only sound fear, it may also, in this inward direction, hold it down. A working almond seems to place a steadying hand on the deeper alarm, keeping the body from tipping into full panic at every internal wobble. Take the almond away, and that hand lifts. The very structure we blame for fear may, when the threat comes from within, be one of the things protecting you from it. This inward alarm also helps explain why panic can haunt a person for years. Some people carry a body that reads its own inner signals as danger more readily than others do. A slightly fast heartbeat, a touch of breathlessness, an ordinary flush of feeling in the chest. To this oversensitive inner alarm, any of these can read as catastrophe, and it fires. The sensation itself was harmless. The response was total. And because the trigger came from inside the body, there was nowhere to run and nothing to point at. Only the crushing certainty that something was terribly wrong. Let this settle for a moment, because it changes everything that follows. Fear is not a single switch in a single spot. It is a set of alarms, some facing the world and some facing the body, some triggering and some restraining. But notice what all of them still have in common. Whether it is a snake on the path or carbon dioxide in the blood, the threat is real, and the threat is here. Something is genuinely happening to the body in this moment. That is still fear, in every case. It is not the thing that keeps you awake at 3 a.m. with nothing wrong and nowhere to run. To find that, we have to look for a threat that is not present at all. We have to look for a danger that lives only in what has not yet happened. Change the scene. There is no snake now, and no bad air. You're lying in your own bed in your own safe house, and you're waiting. The test results come back sometime this week. The difficult conversation is set for tomorrow morning. The message you sent hours ago still has no reply. Nothing is happening to you. No threat has entered the room. and yet your body is braced exactly as if one had. The shallow breath, the tight chest, the mind circling and circling with nowhere to land. This is not fear of something in front of you. This is dread of something that might be ahead of you. That single change is the whole difference between fear and anxiety. Fear has an object that is here. There is a snake. There is a cliff edge. There is carbon dioxide in the blood. Anxiety has an object that is uncertain and somewhere ahead and perhaps not real at all. There might be a snake. The results might be bad. Something might go wrong tomorrow. Fear points at a fact. Anxiety points at a possibility. And your body treats that possibility almost exactly as it treats the fact. There is a piece of the brain built for precisely this, and it sits right beside the almond, part of the same close family. It carries a long and clumsy name, the bed nucleus of the stria terminalis. The name does not matter. What it does is everything. Where the amygdala handles the sharp and present and identifiable threat, this neighbour handles the vague and lasting and uncertain one. It is the organ of the maybe. It is where a danger with no clear shape and no fixed time is felt in the body as a slow and grinding unease. A neuroscientist named Michael Davis spent years working out the division of labour between these two structures, and what he found was a clean split. Give an animal a brief and reliable signal of danger, a cue that always means a shock is coming right now. You get a fast and sharp spike of fear that rises and falls with the cue. That spike runs through the amygdala's output. But give the animal a different kind of threat. Make it long and unpredictable, a danger that could arrive at any moment with no warning and no schedule. Now something else happens. You get a slow, sustained, grinding state of apprehension. And that state does not run through the amygdala at all. It runs through the bed nucleus, the organ of the maybe. The two could be separated cleanly. Damage the amygdala's output, and the sharp cued fear falls away while the long uncertain dread remains. Damage the bed nucleus instead, and the sustained dread lifts while the sharp fear stays perfectly intact. Two structures, two kinds of threat. One built for the danger you can see and time, the other for the danger that merely might be. This is not one fear system dialed up and down. It is two different machines, wired to two different questions. And here is the trigger that turns the second machine on. It is not the size of the threat. It is the uncertainty of it. A large danger that you can see coming, and time precisely is handled, briefly and sharply, by fear. A small danger that might arrive, with no way to know when or whether, is handled slowly and endlessly by anxiety. Unpredictability is the fuel. The less you can pin down when, or whether the bad thing will come, the harder this system works, and the longer it holds the body lit. When researchers look closely at people who live with anxiety, this is the system that stands out. Faced with a threat that is uncertain, a shock that might or might not come, their bed nucleus runs hotter and holds longer than other people's. The machine built for the maybe is simply turned up. It is not that they are afraid of more things than the rest of us. It is that their brain treats every open question as a threat left hanging and keeps the body ready for an answer that refuses to settle. The two machines are not strangers to each other either. The sharp alarm can hand its work over to the slow one. A single jolt of fear can seed hours of low dread. The amygdala firing once and then passing the body over to the bed nucleus to keep it braced long after the moment itself has gone. This is how one frightening event in the morning can leave you uneasy for the rest of the day. The spike is long over. The low tone underneath it is still humming. You already know this from the outside on a night that has nothing to do with laboratories. Someone you love has gone out and told you only that they might be home late and given you no hour to expect them. So you lie there, unable to sleep. You cannot rest, because at any second the door might open, or the phone might ring with the worst kind of news. There is no moment in all those hours when you can be certain it is finally safe to stop listening. Nothing is happening, nothing at all, and still you cannot let go, because the not knowing will not let you. Map that night onto the two systems and you can feel exactly where each one lives. The amygdala is the jolt in your chest if the door actually does bang open in the dark. Sharp, immediate, gone in a moment. The bed nucleus is the long, wire-tight wakefulness of all the empty hours before, where nothing is happening and you still cannot rest. And notice where the two part ways. The door, in the end, does open, and then the waiting stops. The anxious brain has learned to lie awake for a door that never has to open at all. It can hold the body in that state over a thing that will never come, for as long as the uncertainty lasts. So the plain shape of it is this. Fear is the answer to a threat. Anxiety is the answer to a maybe. One is a spike that rises and falls, the other a low tone that can hold for hours. But this raises the question that anxiety turns on, the one that explains why it hurts the way it does. Why should a maybe be so much harder to carry than a real and present danger? Why does the uncertain threat keep the body lit for hours, when the actual snake is dealt with in seconds and then forgotten? The answer lies in the one thing that fear always gets. It is the one thing anxiety can never have. The one thing fear always gets is an ending. Watch how a real fright actually runs its course. The threat appears, and the body ignites, and you act. Then the threat resolves. The car straightens on the road. The shape in the grass turns out to be a branch after all. The intruder was a coat on a chair. Whatever it was, it passes. And the moment it passes, the all-clear sounds inside you. The heart slows. The breath drops. The body stands itself down. Fear is a sprint, and every sprint has a finish line, and crossing that line is what shuts the whole thing off. Anxiety can never reach that finish line because its threat has not happened yet. And this is the heart of why it hurts. There is nothing present to run from, so you cannot escape it. There is nothing in front of you to fight, so you cannot defeat it. And since the danger has not actually arrived, you never get to feel the clean relief of having survived it. The danger is a maybe, and a maybe cannot be crossed off. You can wait, and the thing you dread still sits out there in the future. It is exactly as possible as it was before. Think about what this does to the off switch. The system that ends fear is triggered by resolution, by the threat being dealt with one way or another. Anxiety offers it no resolution to work with. The absence of the bad thing is not the same as safety, because the bad thing has simply not arrived. Tonight passing without disaster does not prove tomorrow is safe. Getting through this hour does not close the question of the next, so the alarm has nothing to switch it off, and it does the only thing it can. It keeps running. This is why fear is a spike, and anxiety is a plateau. Fear rises hard and falls away because the world gives it an answer. Anxiety climbs to a certain pitch and then simply holds there, hour after hour, because no answer ever comes. The body is running the emergency program with no end in sight, spending on a crisis that has no moment of being over. A machine built for seconds is left switched on for weeks. Nothing about it is malfunctioning. It is doing exactly what it does, for far longer than it was ever meant to. It also explains something that anyone who has tried to comfort an anxious person already knows. Reassurance does not work. You can tell someone that it will almost certainly be fine, that the odds are good, and there is nothing to worry about. It does not switch the alarm off. It cannot because the system is not asking for probability. What it wants is certainty, and the future is the one thing that can never be certain. Every reassurance is met by another quiet what if, and each what if pries the door back open. You cannot argue a system out of a state it did not argue itself into. The mind does keep trying to find an ending, though, and it reaches for the one move that seems to promise relief. That move is avoidance. You stay off the plane, you skip the difficult call, you keep well away from the crowded room. And for a moment, avoiding the thing does quiet the alarm, which is why avoidance is so hard to resist. But the quiet is a trap. Each time you flee the uncertain threat, the alarm quietly learns that fleeing was the right call, that the danger must have been real enough to run from. Avoidance does not starve anxiety. It feeds it, and it teaches the brain to fear the thing a little more the next time. This also points to why some people live with far more anxiety than others, even in the very same circumstances. It is not that their lives hold more danger. It is that their tolerance for not knowing is lower. To a mind that can sit with an open question, a maybe is just a maybe. To a mind that cannot, every maybe is an emergency demanding an answer that the future refuses to hand over. The machine built for uncertainty is simply set to a higher pitch. It treats the ordinary not knowing of daily life as a threat to be braced against hour after hour. Now hold still and see the true shape of what anxiety is, because it is not what it feels like from inside. It does not feel like a healthy system. It feels like something has gone wrong with you. But the machinery is not broken at all. Anxiety is the fear system working perfectly, pointed at a target it was never built to handle. The amygdala and its neighbours were shaped over millions of years for threats that appear and then resolve. Threats you can run from or fight or outlast. Aim that same equipment at an imagined future, at a danger that never arrives to be survived, and it simply runs without stopping. The fault is not in the machine, it is in what the machine has been pointed at. And here is the strange gift buried in that, the thing that will matter most by the end of tonight. Only a very particular kind of animal can be anxious. You need a brain that can hold the future in mind, that can run a danger forward in time and feel it before it exists. A creature that lives only in the present cannot dread tomorrow, because for it there is no tomorrow to dread. The snake either is there or it is not. Anxiety is the price of admission for a mind that can imagine what has not happened. The same power that lets you plan and prepare and see trouble coming is the power that lets you suffer over trouble that never comes. You can even watch this price being paid as a person grows. The youngest children feel plenty of fear and very little true anxiety. A small child startles at the loud noise and cries at the stranger, all present. Tense alarms about what is happening right now. The dread of what might happen next week arrives later, as the mind grows the power to travel forward in time. Anxiety and imagination come of age together. One is simply the shadow the other casts. But this leaves one question still open, and it is the one that makes anxiety feel so personal. Why does the brain fasten this endless alarm onto particular things? Why one bridge and not another? One crowded room and not the next? One harmless flutter in the chest that sets off hours of dread, while 1,000 others pass unnoticed? The alarm does not fire at everything equally. It has favourites, and it learns them. Because fear is not only something you are born with, it is something you can be taught, and it can be taught in a single unforgettable moment. Fear is not only inherited. The reason the alarm has favourites is that a great deal of it is learned, and it is learned by a rule so simple that a single moment can teach it for good. The rule is association. When two things happen together and one of them matters, the brain quietly binds them. Later, the one can stand in for the other. Fear spreads along these bindings, jumping from the thing that truly hurt you to whatever happened to be nearby when it did. The first person to see this clearly was studying drool, not fear. Ivan Pavlov, working with dogs, noticed that they began to salivate not only at food, but at the sound that always came just before it. A bell, a footstep, the click of a latch. The sound meant nothing on its own. But paired again and again with dinner, it took on dinner's meaning, until the sound alone could make the mouth water. A neutral thing, joined to a meaningful one, becomes meaningful itself. That is the whole engine of learned fear, running in a quieter key. Then, in 1920, a psychologist named John Watson pushed the same idea into a place that would never be allowed today. He worked with an infant known to history as Little Albert. The baby was calm and curious, and at first he liked the small white rat they showed him, reaching for it happily. Then they changed the game. Each time the rat appeared, they struck a steel bar behind his head with a hammer, a sudden and frightening clang. It took only a handful of pairings. Soon the rat alone, with no noise at all, sent the child into distress. He had learned to fear it. What happened next is the part that matters most for you. Albert's new fear did not stay neatly on the rat. It spread. He became frightened of a rabbit, of a dog, of a fur coat, of cotton wool, of anything soft and white and furry. The alarm, once attached, reached outward to everything that resembled its trigger. It worked on rough likeness rather than careful detail, exactly as the low road does. One bad pairing had seeded a whole family of fears in a mind that started out unafraid. Ledoux, decades later, found where in the brain this binding is actually made. It is made in the amygdala. When a harmless sound arrives at the same instant as a shock, the connections that carry that sound into the almond are strengthened. Physically, then and there. The sound is now wired to the alarm. Play it again, and the amygdala fires as if the shock itself had returned. The memory of what to fear is not stored as a fact somewhere you can find it. It is built into the wiring of the alarm itself, so that the trigger and the terror become a single circuit. There is an everyday version of this that you learned before you could talk. You touched a hot stove once, just once. You did not need a second lesson, or a third to be sure. One searing instant and the knowledge was burned into you for the rest of your life, so deep that your hand pulls back from that heat without any thought at all. That is how the amygdala learns fear. It is welded in place the first time, not learned slowly through repetition. Most memories soften and blur as the years pass. A fear learned in one bad second can stay razor sharp for decades. And that durability is not an accident. Think about it from the point of view of staying alive. A lesson like this nearly killed me is worthless if you have to learn it twice. The whole value of it depends on it sticking after a single exposure and never fading, because in the wild there may be no second chance to get it right. So the fear learning system was built to do exactly that. Learn fast, learn hard, hold on. It is one of the most powerful and lasting kinds of learning your brain is capable of, and it was made that way on purpose. Stranger still, you do not even need to remember the moment for the fear to hold. The amygdala can keep a fear alive long after the conscious memory of how it started is gone. People walk around with a dread of some particular thing that they cannot explain, certain there is no reason for it. And all the while the reason sits intact in the wiring of the alarm, far below the reach of memory. The thinking mind has lost the file. The alarm never did. The body goes on remembering what the mind has forgotten. Now bring this back to the dread that keeps you awake, because here is where the favourites come from. Suppose the inner alarm fires hard one afternoon in a supermarket, a wave of panic out of nowhere. The brain does what it always does. It binds the terror to whatever was present when it struck, and what was present was the supermarket, the aisles, the lights, the crowd. None of them did anything to you. They were simply there in the moment the alarm went off, and that was enough. Now the supermarket itself is a trigger, and walking into one tightens your chest before you've taken a single step inside. That is the cruel elegance of it. The bridge, the crowded room, the flutter in your chest that once came with a panic attack, all of them become cues, not because they are dangerous, but because they were nearby. The brain, doing precisely the job it evolved to do, welds the alarm to the innocent bystanders of your worst moments. Fear attaches to whatever is present when fear arrives. And once it is attached by the same durable design that keeps you off the hot stove, it does not easily let go. Which raises the hardest and most hopeful question of the whole night. If a fear can be branded into you by a single moment, and if it is built by design to resist ever fading, then how does anyone ever get free of one? Can a fear that has been learned ever truly be unlearned? The answer is yes. But it does not happen the way you would expect, and the strange manner of it explains one of the most painful things about fear. It explains why the fears we thought we had beaten so often come back. Here is the first thing to understand about unlearning a fear. You cannot erase the original. The brain has no delete key for a fear memory. Once the amygdala has welded a trigger to the alarm, that wiring stays. What the brain can do instead is something cleverer, and in the end more fragile. It can build a second memory on top of the first. This new memory is a lesson that says the thing is safe now, and the brain uses it to hold the old alarm down. The building of that second memory has a name. It is called extinction, though the word is misleading because nothing is actually extinguished. It works like this. You meet the feared thing again. The tone, the bridge, the supermarket aisle. And this time, nothing bad happens. Then you meet it again, and again nothing bad happens. Slowly the alarm quiets. The body stops flooding. To the person it feels like the fear is dissolving, washing away with each safe encounter. But it is not washing away. It is being covered over. The place that does the covering sits just behind your forehead. It is a region of the prefrontal cortex, the newest and most deliberate part of the brain, and part of its job is to put a brake on the amygdala. Two researchers, Gregory Quirk and Mohammed Milad, found the signal itself. As an animal learns that a once frightening cue is now safe, particular cells in this prefrontal region begin to fire, and their firing is what holds the alarm down. The safety is not the absence of fear, it is an active signal sent from the front of the brain, pressing on the almond and telling it to stay quiet. And this is why the original fear was never gone, only pinned. Because the pin can slip. Take the person who has calmly crossed 100 safe bridges and put them on a bridge in a new city, in bad weather, and the old fear can come back in full. Let enough time simply pass and it can return on its own, unbidden, one morning for no reason. Give them a single sharp scare and the whole thing can come roaring back as if the safe crossings had never happened. The safety memory is real, but it is local and it is delicate. The fear memory underneath it is durable and patient. When the two compete, the old one is always still there, waiting for the newer one to weaken. There is a familiar thing that behaves exactly like this. You cannot take the old warning sign down. It is bolted to the wall for good, and no tool you own will move it. What you can do is fix a newer and brighter sign over it, one that says the way ahead is clear. On a good day, in good light, your eye reads only the new sign. You walk on without a second thought. But the old warning is still there, right behind it, exactly where it always was. And the moment the light goes bad, or the new sign slips even slightly, your eye finds the old words again. Unfaded, still shouting their warning. The old sign has no screws you can reach. All you were ever able to do was cover it. This tells you something important about the brake at the front of the brain. It is effortful, and it is expensive, and it is fragile. It works best when you're calm, rested and steady. But the prefrontal cortex is a demanding thing to run, and it is the first part to falter when you're exhausted or stressed or overwhelmed. And when the brake slips, the alarm it was holding down does not stay down. It surges. This is why the fear you managed all day comes back for you at 3 a.m. when you're tired and your guard is finally lowered. It is not that the fear grew stronger in the dark, it is that the hand holding it down grew tired. None of this means a fear cannot be beaten. It means something more honest and in the end more useful. The way out of a fear is not to erase it, but to build safety on top of it, patiently, in enough places and enough times that the new memory grows strong and the brake grows reliable. This is exactly what careful therapy does. It does not scrub the fear away. It walks a person toward the feared thing, gently and repeatedly, until the front of the brain has laid down a safety memory deep enough to hold. It works. It genuinely works. But it works by building rather than deleting. That is why it takes repetition, and why a setback along the way is not a failure. A setback is just the old sign showing through, waiting to be covered again. There is a practical lesson hidden in all of this, and it explains a common heartbreak. A safety learned in one place is tied to that place. Beat a fear in the calm of a quiet room and the brake may hold beautifully there, and fail the moment you step outside into the wider world, where the old sign is not yet covered. This is why safety has to be built in many settings, not one. The front of the brain does not learn once that a thing is safe. It learns that a thing is safe in this place, and then in the next one, and slowly in the one after that. Only then does the lesson become general enough to travel with you. Rest matters too, because a brake this costly to hold needs a mind that is not already worn thin. So this is where the mechanism has brought us. A fear can be learned in a moment and never truly erased. It can be covered by a safety the front of the brain must actively hold in place, and that safety can slip whenever you are worn down, which is precisely when the old fear returns. It is a complete and satisfying account of the machinery. The alarm fires, the body floods, the front of the brain pushes back. Circuits and chemicals, each doing its job in the dark. And yet something is missing from all of it. Read back over everything we have described tonight and look for one particular thing. The amygdala firing, the adrenaline loosing into the blood, the bed nucleus holding its long watch, the prefrontal brake pressing down. Nowhere in that entire account have we actually found the thing you live through when you're afraid, the dread itself, the awful felt weight of it. Where in all this wiring is the feeling of fear? So look again at everything we have laid out and notice the hole in the middle of it. We have a detector that spots a threat. We have a cascade that floods the body. We have a deeper alarm that watches the blood, and a second machine that dreads the uncertain future, and a brake at the front of the brain that struggles to hold it all down. It is a complete description of the machinery of fear, and it does not contain fear. Nowhere in all those circuits have we located the one thing you actually know from the inside. The raw and awful felt sense of being afraid. The man who did more than anyone to map the fear circuit spent his later years insisting on something that sounds, at first, like a contradiction of his own life's work. Joseph Ledoux began to argue that the amygdala does not create the feeling of fear at all. It detects threats. It drives the body, the freezing and the racing heart and the flood of hormones. But all of that, he insists, can happen with no feeling attached to it whatsoever. He calls these the defensive survival circuits, and their entire job is to keep you alive, not to make you feel anything. They can run completely in the dark. SM is the proof of it, hiding in plain sight this whole time. When the carbon dioxide hit her blood, her deep survival circuits fired exactly as they should. Her body panicked. Her heart raced, her breath heaved, her hands flew up. The machinery worked. And only after all of that was underway did she report the arrival of an actual feeling, something she had never known before. The response came first, from the circuits. The feeling came second, from somewhere else. The two are not the same event, and they do not even happen in the same place. So where does the feeling come from? Ledoux's answer is that it is built higher up by the same machinery that gives you the conscious experience of anything at all. The brain gathers up several ingredients at once. It takes the state of the body, the pounding heart and the tight chest. It takes the situation, whatever is happening and whatever it seems to mean. It takes memory, what this has meant before and what it might lead to next. And it weaves those threads together into a single conscious experience and stamps it with a name. I am afraid. Once you see fear built this way, a familiar oddity suddenly makes sense. The very same racing heart can be read as two completely different feelings. Waiting for bad news, a pounding chest is dread. Standing in the wings about to walk on stage, that same pounding chest is thrilling anticipation. The body is doing nearly the identical thing in both. What differs is the story the mind lays over it, the situation, and the meaning that the cortex feeds into the mix. The body offers a raw state. The mind decides what that state means, and the meaning is the feeling. So here is the turn the whole night has been climbing toward. Fear is not a finished thing the amygdala hands up to you. It is a story your brain tells about your body. The alarm itself is wordless and automatic and ancient. The feeling of fear is the mind's reading of that alarm, assembled out of the body and the situation and everything you know and expect. You do not simply receive fear. In part, you compose it yourself. You do it moment by moment, never noticing that you are the one doing it. This is not a trick of words, and it does not mean the fear is imaginary. The pounding is real. The dread is real. The suffering is entirely real. What the science is saying is stranger than imaginary. It is that a real feeling can be assembled out of a real body, and a story that is not true, and that the mind cannot easily tell the two apart. A feeling built on a false alarm hurts exactly as much as one built on a real one. That is a large part of why you cannot simply decide to stop being afraid, and now, at last, anxiety falls fully into place. Anxiety is that same interpreting, future-facing machinery turned loose with no real event to work from. The cortex does not need a snake in the room to supply the situation and the memory. It can imagine them. It can build the disaster in full, run it forward, and feed that invented scene into the same loop that reads the body and writes the feeling. The heart is told to race by a threat made entirely of thought. The dread that follows is assembled just as carefully, just as convincingly, from something that has never happened and may never happen. It is a complete feeling, built on an empty stage. There is something quietly freeing in seeing it this way, even with the mystery left standing. If the feeling is assembled from the body and the story, then those are the two places it can be reached. You cannot delete the ancient alarm and you cannot argue the almond out of firing, but you can change the state of the body by slowing the breath until the heart begins to follow, and you can change the story by meeting the racing chest with some meaning other than catastrophe. Neither move erases fear. Both of them change what the feeling gets built out of. Here, though, we come to the true edge of what anyone knows. Honesty demands that we stop and name it. How the brain turns firing cells and body signals into the felt experience of anything, the actual raw feeling and not merely the behaviour, is one of the deepest unsolved problems in all of science. Ledoux's account is powerful, and it is also argued over. Thoughtful researchers disagree about where feelings truly come from, and whether the line between the mute survival circuit and the conscious feeling is really as sharp as he draws it. We can map the alarm down to individual cells. The felt experience it somehow becomes remains, in large part, a mystery. And it is the most intimate mystery there is, because it is not happening in a textbook. It is happening in you, tonight, every time your heart jumps at a sound in the dark. The thing that keeps you awake worrying is not simply being done to you by some small structure buried in your head. It is in part something your own mind is making, thread by thread. It is built from the state of your body and the stories you tell about tomorrow, which changes what you're actually holding on those nights when the heart is pounding and the room is safe and nothing at all is wrong. Come back now to where we began, to that fear that arrives when nothing is wrong, the safe room, the ordinary evening, the heart going hard over a thing that has not happened. You understand it a little differently now. It is not a malfunction or a weakness or a sign that something has gone wrong with you. It is the oldest guardian you own. It has been carried forward, alive and unbroken, through a long line of creatures that survived precisely because this alarm fired first and asked nothing. Even now it stands ready to do the single thing it was ever shaped to do, to throw the body into readiness at the faintest hint of danger. It cannot tell when it fires that the danger is sometimes one you built out of thought. It never could tell the difference. Asking it to would be asking it to be something other than the thing that kept you alive. And the part of you that built that danger, that ran tomorrow forward and felt it before it arrived, is not your enemy either. It is close to the finest thing your brain can do. The same power that lets you dread what has not happened is the power that lets you plan and prepare and imagine and hope. The dread and the foresight are one organ. You cannot keep the gift and hand back the cost. The mind that lies awake fearing the future is the very mind that can have a future at all. There are two watchmen inside you. One faces outward, poised for a danger that is real and in front of you. The other faces forward into time, keeping its long vigil over things that have not happened and mostly never will. Tonight, in a room this safe, both of them stand guard over a body that is in no danger at all. They cannot know that, but you can. Think about what that means. The thing in you that feels fear whenever it comes is the same thing listening to these words right now. That fear is never done to you by a stranger in your skull. It is made by you, out of your own body and your own story, by the most intimate machinery you will ever carry. And what one part of the mind can assemble, another part can meet. The breath can be slowed until the heart follows it down. The story can be softened. The guardian can be told gently and honestly that tonight there is nothing here to run from, because tonight there truly is not. The room is safe. The night is quiet. The only danger anywhere in it was the one your mind was clever enough, and in its own way faithful enough to imagine. And a mind that can build a fear out of nothing can also, slowly, let that fear go. So let the old guardian lower its alarm just for these few hours. Let the long watch stand down. There is nothing in the dark but you and the quiet, and beside you, an ancient and faithful thing that has kept you safe your whole life. Tonight, it has earned the simple right to rest. You have spent your whole life at the mercy of this system, jumping when it jumped, dreading when it dreaded, never once being asked. Tonight you know it a little better. You know it is old and faithful and not very clever. You know it would rather wake you 1,000 times for nothing than fail you even once. And you know that whenever it fills a safe and quiet room with dread, it is simply wrong. There is time enough tomorrow for whatever tomorrow holds. Right now there is only the dark and your breath slowing, and the oldest guardian you own standing gratefully down. If the strange inner workings of your own mind are something you would like to keep exploring, A moment of your time to subscribe means a great deal, and it helps these quiet journeys reach the people who would be glad to find them.